Have you ever been called mature for your age? Maybe you were the kid who never cried in public, the one who kept the peace, stayed quiet, and always made sure others were okay, even when you weren't. Psychology has a name for that, and it's not strength. It's what happens when a child has to grow up too fast, emotionally. Today, we're going deep into the hidden cost of being the strong one and why so many high functioning adults are still carrying the weight of a childhood they never got to live. It always starts with praise. You're so mature for your age. Adults say it with admiration, a warm smile, a hint of surprise. They think they're complimenting you, that they've noticed something special. But what they don't realize is that behind that maturity is a wound, a quiet sacrifice you had no words for. Because no child becomes mature on their own. Something happens first. Maybe it was a parent who couldn't show up. Maybe it was conflict, addiction, distance, or simply silence so loud you had to grow up just to hear yourself think. You learn quickly, too quickly, that the room feels safer when you're calm, that people are easier when you smile. That being small makes you vulnerable, but being responsible earns you safety. So you start holding it all together, not because you want to, but because nobody else will. And then the praise comes. You're so responsible. You're like a little adult. You're wise beyond your years. It sounds like a compliment, but really it's a confession that somewhere the adults stopped being the adults. Psychologists have a name for this: parentification. It's when a child becomes the caretaker, the emotional anchor, the one who manages the chaos, not because they want to, but because they have to. It often begins subtly. A parent is struggling, mentally, emotionally, or physically. Maybe they're absent. Maybe they're there, but unpredictable. Maybe they rely on you in ways they shouldn't. And so you adapt. You learn to read the room before you speak. You listen more than you talk. You put others at ease, often without realizing it. Your nervous system becomes wired for tension. You become hypervigilant, always scanning for mood changes, tone shifts, tiny signs of danger. It shows up in small ways. You walk lighter down the hallway. You perfect the art of making yourself small. You learn which questions are safe and which ones might trigger something you can't control. You become fluent in reading faces, voices, silences, mastering a language most children never have to speak. You stop crying because it doesn't help. You start pleasing because it keeps things calm. You develop an uncanny ability to sense when someone's about to break, and you're already 3 steps ahead, smoothing it over before it happens. They call it maturity, but psychology calls it survival. What's rarely spoken about is what that mature child loses. Not toys or birthdays, but things harder to name: ease, play, safety, the deep knowing that someone will catch you when you fall. You never get to just exist. You're performing, monitoring, adapting. You smile even when your chest aches. You listen even when you're drowning. You stay quiet so others don't shatter. And the world sees a high-functioning child, polite, bright, so well-behaved. But no one asks, at what cost? What they don't see is the grief, the invisible kind, the kind that doesn't look like tears, but tension, the kind that buries itself so deep it takes decades to feel. Because when you grow up like that, your childhood doesn't feel lost. It feels normal. Until one day, it doesn't. Fast forward, you're grown now. You have a job, maybe a partner, maybe kids, and people still say it. You're so composed. You're the strong one. I don't know how you do it. But inside, you're tired. Tired of being the one who always holds it together. Tired of managing emotions, yours and everyone else's. tired of being admired for what was actually a survival pattern. You rarely ask for help. You don't trust easily. You listen to your friends, but rarely let them see you cry. And you're the therapist friend, the fixer, the emotional first responder. And yet, deep down, you ache for someone to just say, "You don't have to do this alone." In relationships, the pattern repeats. You're attracted to people who need you because being needed feels like being loved. You over-explain your feelings because you learned early that clarity prevents chaos. You apologize for things that aren't your fault because harmony always felt safer than honesty. You stay longer than you should in situations that hurt you because leaving feels like abandoning someone the way you were abandoned. And when someone actually shows up for you, steady and consistent, you don't know what to do with it. It feels too easy, too good. So you test it, push it, wait for it to collapse because your nervous system still believes that love is something you earn, not something you receive. Being strong becomes an identity. It's how you survive. It's how you feel valuable. But slowly, that identity becomes a cage. You start to wonder, what would happen if I stopped being the strong one? If I asked for help instead of offering it? If I let myself need something? There's a quiet war inside you, a longing to be cared for, and a terror of depending on anyone. You crave safety, but you fear closeness. You want to be seen, but you don't know how to show your pain. You want to be held, but your body flinches at softness. This is the dual truth, that you're proud of how far you've come and grieving that you had to get there alone. Underneath all of this is attachment trauma. It's what happens when the people you depended on were unavailable, inconsistent, or emotionally unsafe. So your body did what it had to do. It chose performance over presence, stability over spontaneity, control over comfort. Your brain began to associate chaos with normalcy. Stillness felt suspicious. Love felt like something you had to earn or repay. This rewiring happens young and silently. By the time you're grown, it feels like personality. I've just always been like this. But you weren't. You adapted. You survived. And now you're allowed to unlearn. Here's the truth no one tells the mature child. You weren't born old. You became wise because you had no map, only instincts. You became calm because chaos was too familiar. You became responsible because it was the only way to feel safe. But none of that was weakness. It was brilliance. It was intelligence. It was your nervous system doing its best to protect you. And now, as an adult, that same intelligence can become your healing. Because emotional maturity isn't about never breaking. It's about knowing when it's finally safe to let go. Healing begins slowly, not by fixing, not by becoming better, but by offering yourself the things you never received. It's called reparenting, the practice of becoming the caregiver you always needed. You learn to rest without guilt, cry without apologizing, receive without flinching, say no without shame, ask for comfort, and believe you deserve it. You practice small acts of tenderness. You let yourself sleep in. You buy yourself flowers. You sit with your own sadness instead of immediately trying to solve it. You stop mid-sentence and ask yourself, what do I actually need right now? And then, remarkably, you give it to yourself. You let others in, even if it scares you. You trust softness, even when your body says it's dangerous. You learn that your needs aren't a burden, they're a birthright. And slowly, the weight begins to lift. You look back at the child you were, the one everyone admired, the one who never made a fuss, the one who smiled through storms. And instead of pride, you feel something deeper, compassion. They didn't need to be praised, they needed to be held. You realize, you're no longer stuck in survival. You get to choose softness now. You get to come home, not to a place, but to yourself, because you're not broken. You're just someone who learned to be strong too soon, and now you're learning to be whole. Were you ever told you were mature for your age? Do you remember when you first realized you had to grow up early? What does being taken care of look like to you now? If this reflection resonated, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and tap the bell icon so you don't miss tomorrow's story. Share this with someone who's always been the strong one. Our other stories should be appearing on your screen now. Watch them next, and I'll see you tomorrow at the same time with a brand new video.